Hi, everyone, and welcome to our March Madness event. This event is one of a series that Ready Set Exec holds every month to support our job seeking network with actionable tips and advice to help you on your job search. We realize now that a standard executive job search is taking 6 to 9 months. And so it's good to have a community and support as you go through this process, which can be very psychologically draining. I know I've dealt with 4 layoffs myself. And so we've assembled a pretty solid panel for today to support you with your job search. First off is Kelly Nash, a Chicago-based career coach, writer, and speaker who helps high achievers gain clarity and confidence to make meaningful career moves and find alignment in their work. With 15 years of experience across marketing and technology, she blends corporate expertise with a strategic, brand-forward approach to career growth. Her clients have landed roles at companies like Google, Hyatt, Oracle, L'Oreal, and LinkedIn. Today, she will speak about building intentional connections in your job search. Next up, we have Kathy Moore talking about the experience advantage, refining age and authority in executive hiring. Kathy Moore is a career and mindset coach with more than 2 decades of experience in human resources, leadership development, and career transition coaching. She helps professionals navigate career changes, strengthen their personal brand, and approach the job search with clarity and confidence. Today, she will share practical strategies to help executives reposition themselves and move forward with purpose in the next chapter of their careers. And finally, we have Why You're Qualified and Not Getting Called Back with Tasha Blaze, career strategist and certified professional resume writer who works with experienced professionals navigating today's competitive job market. She specializes in helping candidates clarify the scope, impact, and leadership behind their experience so hiring decision makers can quickly recognize their value. By analyzing hiring trends and screening behavior, she helps professionals improve interview response rates and position themselves more effectively. So first off, we're going to hand this over to Kelly to discuss about building your intentional connections in your job search. As always, feel free to check us out at readysetexec.com to learn more about our executive search firm. We do recruit across the US and Canada in sales, marketing, HR, and operations. So if you're one of those executives in that space, feel free to check us out and send in a resume for an intro call with either myself or Patrick. It's all yours, Kelly.
I'm a career alignment coach, and I am the founder of Kelly Nash & Co., where I help mid-career high achievers build clarity and confidence to realign their careers and step into their next chapter. So as John mentioned, today I'm touching on the topic of one of the most powerful and potentially most misunderstood tools in your job search, which is networking, or as I like to call it, intentional connection building. So by the time I wrap things up today, you'll have a concrete framework and at least one action that you can take following this event. So with that, just a little bit about me. As John mentioned, I've spent 15 years in corporate America, most recently at Salesforce, where I led employee experience and career development for 9,000 employees. And over the last 5 years, I've been building my coaching business where I've supported hundreds of professionals navigating career transitions from first-time job seekers to senior executives. And I'll also share something that I don't always lead with, but it feels very relevant today. I am navigating my own career transition right now. So when I talk about intentional networking, I'm not just speaking as a coach. I'm speaking as someone who's actively actually doing this work alongside my clients. And what I can tell you from both sides of the coin is that everything I'm about to share with you is real and it works. And one of the things that I hear most often from clients is that networking feels awkward, forced, what have you. My goal today is to change that because it doesn't have to be either of those things. So let's start with a reality check. The numbers don't lie. The average corporate job posting receives over 250 resumes, and I would wager to guess that it's probably even more these days. Of those, only 2% of applicants who applied online are actually invited to interview. So if you're actually spending the majority of your job search submitting applications and waiting to hear back, you're actually competing in one of the hardest, most crowded lanes possible. So the job seekers who are actually breaking through and landing those aligned roles aren't just applying more, they're connecting more and more intentionally. And I think the thing that really matters right now is that As we all know, we're in an era where AI can write your resume, it can scan your application, it can auto reject your application in seconds. Because of that, human connection is your biggest competitive advantage. Full stop. And so, what is that missing piece? It's intentional connection building. So, I'm sure we've all heard that stat that 80% or 85% of jobs are filled through networking. 70% of jobs are actually never advertised at all. They live entirely in the hidden job market where positions are filled through networking, referrals, or internal promotion rather than public job boards. Referrals are hired 55% faster, and you're actually four times more likely to get the job when someone in your network actually advocates for you. So when you look at these numbers, they're not small, and I think they tell us something very obvious. The people that you build relationships with are the ones who are going to be able to give you that inside scoop on a company, introduce you to others, invite you to apply, and then also, more importantly, advocate for you when you're not in the room. So, some of the most aligned opportunities don't come from a job posting, they come from a conversation. Yet people are treating networking like it's a transaction. And especially in the landscape that we're navigating, AI is making its impact, right? It's helping us move quicker. It's taking on some of the work to propel us more successfully in the job hunt, but it can't build an actual relationship. It can't express genuine curiosity. It can't show up to a conversation with presence and purpose. That is our human edge, and it's imperative that we lean into it more. So let's talk about what this actually looks like in practice, right? So transactional networking leads with the ask. It's treating people like resources, and oftentimes people feel that on the receiving end. They can feel the inauthenticity that comes with transactional outreaches and asks. On the other hand, intentional connection building leads with curiosity. It's treating people as humans first. And it tends to that relationship over time, not just when there's something to gain or when you have an ask. And it's the kind of networking that makes you memorable. And it's the kind where people actually want to help you because they feel the relationship is real. So, in turn, those conversations feel purposeful, focused, and connected. So here's what that shift looks and sounds like. So I kind of put, two sides of the coin here. Transactional sounds like, can you refer me? Do you have any openings at the company? Hey, can you look at my resume? Asking these questions right out of the gate before you've really even had a real conversation. And I'd argue that hearing some of these questions too, even just after one conversation, can kind of give off the ick. Intentional sounds like, hey, I've been following your work. I'd love to learn more about your career path, your career journey. Or, hey, I saw your post about XYZ on LinkedIn. It really resonated with me. Or, hey, I found something that I thought you'd find super valuable, thought I would share. So you can see the difference, right? One centers on the ask, the other centers on the person. And that one shift changes everything about how people actually respond to you. Oops, going a little ahead of myself here. So how do we put this into practice? I wanted to give a framework that you can use for every single connection that you're building, and it's called the GIVE script. And here's what it stands for. G is go in prepared, show up thoughtfully. I is invest in the genuine connection, leading with curiosity. V is value their time, showcase your meaningful gratitude. And then E is engage ongoing. So stay connected, keep the door open. So we're going to briefly walk through each of these right now. So G stands for go in prepared, and this starts before you ever type a single word in an outreach message, right? The first thing I ask my clients is, what are your outcomes? Before you reach out to anyone, whether you know them or not, asking yourself, why am I initiating this conversation? What am I actually curious about? What would I consider a meaningful outcome from this conversation with this person? That clarity doesn't just help you, but it also comes through in your message and immediately signals that you respect the other person's time. From there, you start to research with purpose. And as we all know, LinkedIn is here at our fingertips and makes it a lot easier. So you can use LinkedIn to look at how this person's grown their career, what they've posted about, what they care about. And the more you understand their world, the more naturally you're going to find those genuine points of connection. And then before you even think about like any type of cold outreach, I always, caution and recommend my clients start with people they've already known or have in their network because your existing network is your warmest asset. So doing things like scrolling your LinkedIn, thinking about people in your network, mentioning what you're looking for to your friends and family. A warm reconnect is always going to outperform cold outreach. And when you do reach out, tailor your message, okay? Ask yourself what seems most important to this person. What do I want them to know, feel, or do after reading this? The relevance creates the connection, and it's what makes you memorable. And one quick pro tip that I always recommend my clients do is like in that initial outreach message, include your availability or a Calendly link or whatever it is directly in that message, because then you're saying, hey, here's my availability. They can make a quick yes, and removing that friction signals respect from the very first touch point. And I saw a stat too that personalized LinkedIn messages get up to 3 times the response rate compared to generic ones. So I think that alone should be enough reason that we put in the extra 5 minutes. So I is investing in genuine connection. Networking is not about selling yourself. It's about showing up, learning, providing value where you can, and being a person that others want to genuinely know. So going into conversations or those informational interviews with a curious mindset and armed with questions about the other person and their experience, rather than just focusing solely on you, is going to have much more success. And it's also going to increase your likability factor. So you can ask things like, what do you love most about your work? What have you found the most rewarding in your role lately? And when you connect, asking those genuine questions, listen to understand, not just to respond, because people are going to remember how you made them feel. So find the common ground as you listen, continue the conversation with questions such as, what advice would you give to someone at my stage? If you were me exploring this path, what would you recommend as a next step? And keep the door open too, right? Based on this conversation, is there anyone else that you would recommend I speak with? So these more informal conversations often lead to more honest, candid responses than a formal interview would have, right? So use them to validate maybe what you're unsure about, whether it's a role, a company, or a career direction. All right, value their time. This is the step that separates the people who build the lasting relationships from those who disappear after they get what they need. So I found this stat: 24% of job seekers send a thoughtful follow-up after a networking conversation. Only 24%. So that means a specific, genuine note immediately puts you ahead of 3 out of 4 people. So after a conversation, send the follow-up, make it specific, reference something that you've discussed, and express genuine gratitude for their time and their insights. So I put a sample script here, thank you for connecting today. I really appreciate your insight about XYZ. It gave me a completely new way to think about XYZ topic, and I'm going to keep you posted on my progress. Please don't hesitate to reach out if there's ever anything I can do for you. You can also end it with a question like, is there any way I can support you ongoing? In a world where everyone is busy and distracted and overwhelmed, genuine gratitude is rare, and that is why exactly it stands out. So when people feel appreciated, they naturally want to stay connected. And then lastly, E is for engage ongoing. So the intentional networker is not ghosting after the conversation. They're not stopping after the thank you either. They keep going with that relationship and that conversation, not aggressively, but consistently, because consistency is what's going to build up that trust, and trust is what moves your search forward. So I get a lot of people don't want to come off as like needy or pushy or feel like you're being a burden. I want to give you explicit permission to let that thinking go, because ongoing touch points, intentional touch points, are how relationships are built. So the people that are feeling like they're a burden are usually the ones that are only showing up when they need something, right? That's not what we're talking about here. And this is where details deepen connection. So thinking back to what the other person shared with you. Did they mention a project they're working on, an event coming up, whatever it be? Reference it when you reach back out to them. Circle back, an article, a quick note, a connection you think they'd benefit from. That follow up will show that you are actually listening, and that's what turns a contact into a connection. For newer connections in particular, too, like one meaningful touch point every couple weeks or even like maybe on a monthly basis is plenty. You don't need to be in their inbox constantly. You just need to be someone that they remember when the right moment comes. And then the last principle here that I just want to leave you with, give before you ask. Lead with generosity every time. The relationship should feel like this mutual long-term connection before any ask ever enters the picture. And when you lead in that way, you become the kind of person people genuinely want to open doors for. So I want to take a moment to be honest with you. Everything that I've just walked you through takes more time than blasting out 100 cold connection requests. Like I get that, but that's exactly the point here, right? Intentional connection building is a long game. It requires more preparation, it requires more presence, more follow through, but it's the strategy that actually pays off, especially in this current job market. So most people are defaulting to volume in the job search right now. Let me send more messages, let me send more connection requests, let me send out more applications, right? It feels productive, but the volume without intention is noise. And in a market that's this competitive, noise does not move the needle by any means. So I wanted to kind of put this out and split it out of like quality over quantity is not just a mindset shift, it's a strategy. So 3 to 5 intentional, well-researched conversations a week done consistently are going to outperform, let's say, 50 generic copy paste messages every single time because people on the other end can feel the difference. I'm sure you've been on the receiving end. You can sense the difference. So, one meaningful connection at a time compounds in ways you can't always see in the moment until someone you connected with, let's say months prior, sends you a message that changes everything. And I actually had a client experience this very thing. So she went to a networking event last spring here in Chicago, stayed in touch with the person, kept showing up periodically. And then months later, it was that contact she met at that event that helped her land exactly the kind of role that she was looking for. So, case in point there. So you don't need hundreds of connections. You just need a handful of real intentional ones, people who genuinely want to see you succeed. So I just want to reiterate, like the most powerful career moves are not happening alone. They are happening in community with advocates, mentors, peers, new connections who see your value and want to help amplify it. That's what intentional connection building is. It's not just building a bigger network, it's building a deeper one. So, as a next step, I just want to give you one action that you can take. You can look at the give script and kind of ask yourself, where am I out? Where am I in the process? What action can I take away and put into practice following this event? So, for example, if you're at G, identify one person in your existing network that you can connect with today or this week. Do your research first and then reach out. Or if you're at E, let's say, find one way that you can stay connected with someone that you've already spoken with. Share an article, leave a comment on one of their LinkedIn posts, let's say, make an intro to someone you feel like they could connect with. And then with that, if you want to stay in touch with me, I am active on LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok. So come find me, connect with me, tell me what landed for you today. I'd love to hear from you. And if you are someone who wants support in this or in landing your next aligned opportunity, I am here. You can learn more about working with me at kellynash.co. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kelly. That was great. I really like the give script that you put together. It makes it a simple way of doing things. Just always makes things easier. It's more memorable to you, right? So
Mhm.
I think that's great. And when we talk about taking the time to be intentional, the average exec job search now is between 6 to 9 months. So in 9 months' time, you do have time to network if it's going to take you that long. So you never know if you find either your next opportunity or in the future that connection you make is going to pay dividends down the road, right? So I think networking is never wasted effort as opposed to applying to thousands of jobs into the nether of AI and everything else, and
Yeah.
you get lost in
Well,
the digital soup that's out there of
I
applications.
know. I know. And I was going to say, on that note of that stat, 6 to 9 months, it's like knowing that even if you have an inkling, if let's say you're in a job right now and you don't love it and you're already getting that inkling, like I'm wanting to, change. I want something new. It's like start now, specifically with the intentional connection building. Like make those connections now because they will pay dividends down the road when you are actually ready to like take action and make a move.
Absolutely. I think people always wait till they lose their job before they start looking for their next role. And it's like,
Yes.
look, if you know there's going to be an acquisition, if you know there's going to be a layoff, if you have a feeling, okay, I need to progress my career and I've been stuck here for 5 years and I need to make a move, start making those networking connections now and see what comes up. And the best position to be in looking for a job is obviously still be employed. There's less stress on you, less pressure. So you can take the time to find the next role you have, right? So, and that's an ideal world. Obviously, there's been tons of layoffs, and we know a lot of people that are laid off in our network. So appreciate that. We're gonna go right next to Kathy here, and Kathy's gonna be talking about the experience advantage, how to reframe your age and authority in executive hiring.
Hi, John. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen here. Hopefully everybody can see this. Can you see it?
Yeah, we're good to go.
Okay, so I'm here to talk about rethinking your executive job search, clarity, positioning, steadiness, and leadership level transitionings. The experience advantage of reframing your age and authority in executive hiring. I'm Kathy Moore. I'm a career transition coach and HR leader. I've been in the HR world, as John has said, for about 20 years. And then I also transitioned into a coach a couple of years ago in the career field. I've been a coach for longer than that, but really felt like I picked up in this area because of my human resource background and so on. And so I thought this was a good move for me and my part. In 20, whoops, get a little ahead of myself here. Um, to start out with, the biggest misconception is executives or people looking in the executive world is the biggest challenges, the market conditions, competition and timing, the volume of applications that are out there in the world, and that's why their resumes are not being looked at, or that the jobs are just too difficult to find in this market right now. But really, a lot of the biggest barriers that we have right now that are actually happening is that we're not positioning our not only our interviews correctly, but our resumes correctly when we're going out there. We're talking about the number of years of experience. As an older person looking in the job market in 2023, I lost my job, and I realized that immediately every place that I went and I interviewed with, there were younger people that I was interviewing with. I wasn't interviewing with people that were my age. It's kind of humbling when you walk into an office full of people in blue jeans and a dress, maybe a dress shirt, but and you're in a business suit and everybody's younger than you. So, immediately you kind of feel like, oh, they're going to think I'm too old or something like that. But really, what it is you have to walk in there and be prepared to position yourself with what it is that you're going to be able to bring to that job. And it's communicating your value to that leadership. Sorry. Um, Capability is rarely the problem. Most executive candidates have strong experience, 25 years of experience or better. Most have leadership capabilities. They're not applying for jobs that are beneath them that they can't do. They've delivered meaningful results. They know what KPIs are. They know what everything is that they're about to go in there, but they struggle to communicate their leadership values clearly. So when they get in there, they think that just a bullet point on a resume is all that they need, and that whoever it is that's sitting in front of them is going to be able to decipher that and realize that that's the person that they want. But so does 100,000 other people, and they send those in every day, and that's going to be deciphered by who's going to be the best person for me to pick from in that pile that's sitting there, and who am I going to pick out of that pile? So what they need to do is they need to really clearly submit what their value is. They have to go from position or from proving, explaining their past roles, listing their responsibilities, talking about their tenure, to positioning, communicating how they impact the company. What is it that they're going to be able to do for that company? Am I going to be able to fix the KPIs? Am I going to be able to bring the company into the 20, the up-to-date machinery? Am I going to be able to do whatever it is that they need to get them to the next level? Those are all things that are going to be communicating the level of leadership that they're looking for. They're going to highlight their outcomes, what they can do for that company, how they can affect the KPIs, and so forth. And then they're going to be framing their future contributions to that company. If they can do that successfully, they can make this impact. I think that those are the people that are going to be future hires for that company. Otherwise, they're going to be left to think, oh my gosh, they're going to be still up there in the proving stage, not in the positioning stage. Too many of us are in that bottom or in the top where we want to make our resumes like that and want to go into our interviews like that. So it's really important to think about that when you're putting together all of your information. So successful executives, what they do is they clarify their leadership narratives, they communicate their value with confidence, they maintain steadiness in their search, and employers consistently favor candidates who do that and demonstrate the composure of strategic thinking during their transitions. I know from, my past experience, once I was able to navigate and to switch my thinking from being a person who wanted to prove things to a person that understood that positioning was able to get myself into a position or into a job, that all of a sudden doors opened up for me. And I was no longer in the position where I was looking. With that, I am welcoming questions. I know I talk a little fast today. Sorry about that. And went through my slides a lot quicker than Kelly did. So any questions for me, John, or anything like that?
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. Yeah, I think one of the things you were mentioning was you know, talking about positioning versus just proving. And I think when I look at a lot of resumes as a recruiter, I do see a lot of people just listing off sort of bullet pointed things, right? So maybe you can give us some examples of how, like, someone would write like problem solving on their resume, right? Or good communicator. How would you instead write that as a you know positioning statement? Can you give us some examples of like positioning statements that would be helpful for some of our executives?
So I could say that I have employee relations background, and I'll use that as an example because that's something that's familiar with me. Instead of just telling you that I have employee relations background, I would say that I have led the organization to improve employee relations by X amount by doing these activities, whether it's leading cultural activities that that gain scores, or that doing employee meetings that allowed input that we actually followed through on, that led to happier employees, lower turnover rates by lowering turnover rates by X, so that you can, things that are tangible that people can look at that says, yes, that person did do something, versus they just were there and did employee engagement. What does that mean to you as an employer? What does employee engagement mean to you? But if you say the turnover rate dropped by X, that means something to you. or absenteeism dropped by Y, that means something to you. Um, Workers' comp costs dropped by so much because I did something to impact that. So you're always looking to show that you did something that impacts the results and what it is that you did.
Yeah, I think, showing KPIs is a big part of resume building for sure now. Being able to show the impact you did in data, because everything's become so data driven, right? So we have to include that in our resumes and in what we're doing. In terms of like ageism, though, I mean, that's definitely something we're seeing a lot more now in the job market. It's one of the isms, let's say, that is prevalent. When I think of like what kind of discrimination do I see in hiring, ageism seems to be one of the top three in terms of what we see happening to candidates. Is there any advice you have for people that are trying to combat ageism or experiencing ageism in their job search? Like, what can they do to mitigate that as much as possible? I mean, obviously, if the interviewer you're dealing with is biased, there's only so much you can do to overcome that, right? If they have their bias against you, but to help you in the process, there's certainly certain things you can do to try to mitigate some of it, right?
So I think one of the things that you need to do is you need to be prepared for questions like, what is your plans for 5 years from now? You need to be, prepared in those situations, especially like if you're 63 years old and you've got, in 5 years you could be retired. So what are you going to answer? How are you going to answer? So being fully prepared for interview questions like that. Um, I think to keep yourself from being filtered out of the job completely before you even get an opportunity to be shown is limiting the amount of history that you have on your or on your resume is to the past 10 years so that they don't see that you've been in human resources for 25 years or 15, can be one way that you can kind of shift the thoughts or of how long or how old you are, or answering, the years of what years you went to college or things like that. Anything that you can make it more non-biased before it even hits their desk helps a little bit. But unfortunately, if you're in an applicant or if you have to go there and apply, a lot of times you can't even get through certain screens because they do ask for the years that you went to college. And if you went to college in 1972, obviously they're gonna see you went to college in 1972, and there's not anything that you can really do about certain things like that. But um, there's, and then the other thing that I think is positioning yourself instead of, again, back to positioning versus proving, and that's, making sure that you're coming to those interviews with value versus experience and job just listing what you've did. I could say that I've been in human resources for 25 years, but it really doesn't tell you what I did that added any value, because I know a lot of people that sit at a desk for 25 years and didn't add value to any organization. And I bet everybody out there could tell you that there's somebody in their history that has been the same way. So I think it's important that you be able to come to an interview with the facts versus just coming to the interview with your experience and not the facts that go along with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think building a narrative about your experience in terms of how you were a top performer, where in every job you've been in, being able to speak to your wins, speak to KPI, those are definitely things we look for in interviews as a recruiter. So can definitely appreciate that. And being able to craft a narrative of how, the impact that you made, right? Have three things or three KPIs you can talk about maybe at each position you had over the last 10, 15 years. How far back do you think we should be including that on our resumes? Like, how far back do you normally write your experience on a resume?
I usually go only to 10 years, but I usually recommend the last 10 years. Again, if you want to go back further, depending on how long you've been in a job or a career, sometimes you have to go longer because there's people out there that have been in for the last, the same job for the last 26 years. Obviously, you're going to use that, but there's not any really workarounds on that type of thing. But if you've most people every 3 to 5 years are changing jobs in this day and age, and if that's the case, then I would only go back for the past 10 years. Um, the other thing I was going to say is also reminding your interviewers that there is value in hiring an experienced person, even if they're going to retire in the next 5 years, because they bring something to the table that the younger generation doesn't have, and that's emotional intelligence with knowing how to navigate some of the things that just life has given you. And so that's, for example, how to navigate challenges in the workplace with coworkers, um, how to, understand that and train the younger workforce. So presenting those types of things when you're in the interview, that you're willing to do, that you're willing to train and share your knowledge with the younger workforce, so that when you leave, that there is somebody there that has some of that tribal knowledge that that they can take with them. So you're not only you're willing to build the next generation, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, and to add to that a little bit, I mean, if people are worried about an executive retiring in 5 years, I mean, the average tenure now in executive positions is like, for marketers, for example, chief marketing officers, 1.8 years they stay in the position. So in most cases, even if you have a younger workforce, they're going to leave in 2 to 3 years anyways in most of these leadership positions that are out there. So the fear of someone retiring in 5 plus years, I mean, it's kind of a moot point. You may actually have better retention with someone that's older because they're like, hey, I'm going to stay here until I decide to finally retire, versus someone who's in the middle of their career and they're like, yeah, I'm definitely leaving in 3 years because I need to get more experience, right? So I think a lot of employers need to stop being so skittish about hiring people near retirement, because you're getting also, as you said, right, that high level of experience, emotional intelligence that took a lifetime to develop. I know I'm definitely a better, let's say, executive than I was 10 years ago through my experience, because I've grown, I've had children. I've
Yeah.
had that life experience that's given me the soft skills that I didn't have when I was in my 20s or 30s or whatever. So yeah, your point is well taken. Well, we're going to move over now to Tasha here, who's going to talk us a little bit about why you're qualified by not getting called back, and appreciate your insights there, Kathy.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, Kathy, that was a good presentation. There's a couple of points that you have already touched on that I am going to as well. For everybody who just joined, I'm a career strategist and certified professional resume writer with 10 years experience in the career transition space. I have a background in HR, adult education, recruiting, and resume writing, which has exposed me to many different perspectives and concerns hiring decision makers consider. So that experience has helped me develop a lot of job search strategies and that are grounded in the research and real hiring market behavior. I'm going to share my screen now. There we go. Yes. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, we're good to go.
Awesome. All right. So I'm covering why you're qualified, but not getting called back. This is to understand how employers screen candidates. It's a conversation that I have almost every week with experienced professionals navigating the job market. What I've learned is that the issue really isn't about qualification. It's about how the hiring decisions are actually made. So today I'm going to walk through how those decision makers screen candidates and why strong professionals still sometimes get overlooked. And quick question. This is something that's very common. If anybody wants to chime in on the chat, I want to know if you're also experiencing these same things, feeling qualified, but you're just not getting the interviews that you would like. I've been noticing a consistent pattern in the market when I speak with professionals who often have 15, 20 plus years into their career with strong track records. They say the same thing, often with a lot of frustration. I'm applying everywhere. I'm spending all this time on applications and I'm barely getting callbacks. So most of people assume something external is happening that's blocking them, like either the ATS or competition, timing. And sometimes those factors do matter, but very often the issue is something else. And it's really about how you're positioned, kind of how Kathy had touched on. Okay, there we go. All right. Another important piece of context is the math of modern hiring. Kelly touched on this earlier as well. Many professionals assume they're kind of competing with 30, 50 candidates, unless you're on LinkedIn where they tell you how many people applied. But many corporate roles now receive hundreds and hundreds of applications, and even more for remote roles specifically. So the typical hiring funnel is about 200, 250. If you look at the research, it does vary just based on industry. But on average, and then only about 5 to 10 of those applicants get called for an interview. And then, of course, one hire ultimately. So that means about 2 to 3% of applicants reach the interview stage. And from the research I've read, this is pretty generous. It's usually in the 1% range. And when hiring managers are juggling their daily responsibilities on top of interviewing, they rely heavily on fast screening filters. When you look at the volume of applicants that we received, it does change the way hiring decisions are made now. Most decisions follow a very simple progression. Your experience goes through into the initial screening filter. Then the key question becomes, does this person look aligned with the role? If the answer is yes, you'll move forward to the interview stage. If the alignment isn't immediately clear, the process often stops there. When someone scans a resume, they're not reading it line by line. Research from Harvard Business Review says it's about 7 to 8 seconds, 7.4 seconds to be exact, on average, that hiring managers are spending to review your resume. So they're definitely not studying every bullet point. They're just trying to quickly scan to figure out, what level do you operate at? What size problems have you solved? What scale of responsibility have you managed? And what kind of business impact you drive? If those signals aren't clear quickly, they often move on to the next candidate. And on that note, this leads me to a very useful exercise I often recommend. Try what I call the 20-second resume test. Have someone who doesn't fully understand your expertise, your resume, and give them 20 seconds to review it. After that, ask them, what job do you think I'm targeting? What level do you think I operate at? What kind of problems do you think I solve? If they struggle to answer those quickly, the issue isn't experience. It's alignment that isn't immediately visible. Qualification versus alignment. This is one of the most important distinctions in the hiring process. Most professionals focus on just the qualification. Saying, I know I can do the job, but why can't they see it? But hiring decisions often hinge on something slightly different, and it all comes down to alignment. So qualification asks, can this person perform the role? Most likely, yes. But alignment asks, do they look like the most obvious fit for this role right now? Hiring managers ask those questions, answer those questions by evaluating things like, have they worked in a similar environment? Have they operated at a comparable scope and scale? Do they understand the industry context? Would they ramp quickly? And because every hiring decision carries risk, the internal question often becomes, is the candidate the clearest and safest match for what we need today? Many professionals assume hiring is about proving capability, but in reality, it's often about reducing uncertainty. When alignment is immediately visible, candidates are far more likely to move forward. So most professionals spend a lot of time preparing for later stages of hiring by practicing interview answers, salary negotiation, preparing for like final discussions. But the biggest hurdle usually is getting through the initial screening filter. At that stage, decision makers are not studying every detail of your experience, like we mentioned before. They're quickly deciding whether your background looks aligned enough to continue reviewing. And many candidates are filtered out before their experience is fully understood because they don't have the time to actually read through it. So the challenge often isn't capability. It's making sure the relevance, of your experience is just immediately visible. All right, and experienced professionals usually have the opposite problem of early career candidates. They have too much experience to explain. So resumes start including every responsibility, every project, every role over many years, and that usually works against you. So for example, these two bullets describe the same experience. One, managed operations across multiple locations versus led operations across 12 locations, generating 85 million in annual revenue. If you were hiring, you would think the second bullet there is more impactful. It reduces the risk. The second, so hiring managers are really just looking for clear signals. And how you position yourself on your resume really does matter because that can cause you to be overlooked. So I worked with a senior operations leader recently with a very strong background, 15 years of experience, managed large teams and multiple facilities, but their resume read mostly like a list of responsibilities, which is very, very common. Hiring managers couldn't quickly see the scale of operations, financial impact, leadership scope. So once we reposition the narrative around business outcomes and scale, the responses changed quickly. Same experience, different clarity. The good news is this usually just requires a few adjustments, not reinvention. You're not changing your experience or being deceptive. You're just clarifying it. You're showing them clearly that you're a fit for that role. So often the shift is just moving relevant information forward at the top of your resume, or just, at the top of whatever section it is. So those decision makers can see it quickly. When they do immediately see all of those areas they have experience in, and it's relevant and related to the role, response rates often improve much more quickly. The key idea behind everything we talked about today, being qualified isn't always what determines who gets interviews, and most of us are led to believe that qualification does get you to the interview. What matters more is whether hiring managers can see the alignment between your experience and the role that they're hiring for. When that alignment is clear, decision makers recognize it much faster. And for the last side, if you're experiencing this challenge right now, you're definitely not alone. Many, many talented professionals are navigating the same issue in the current market. And if this topic resonates with you, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if we aren't already. And thanks everyone for being a part of the conversation.
Thanks, Tasha. That was pretty interesting to think about, the wording that we're using and how, and you're right, a lot of resumes are just like a list of responsibilities or a list of, I mean, I always laugh when I see the career skills thing and then people are listing like problem solver, organized. I saw that on a senior resume last night. I was talking to an executive, a C-level executive, a lot of experience, and at the top of his resume was career skills. And I was like, dude, just get rid of that. We know you're a problem solver. We know you're a great communicator. You've talked to the board, or you've advised at the board level. You don't need to say that, right? So we have a lot of that filler kind of stuff people think that they have to throw in there. So writing the story, right, creating that narrative and positioning yourself, that's a key thing.
And, with what you're touching on, kind of more of the soft skills, I talk to clients who, they're like, I want to make sure they know I'm a strong communicator or that I can do this. And those are the types of things you demonstrate in the interview in person, because it's all, your resume is just a marketing tool to get you that interview. And if you can't back up why you're a creative problem solver or why you're a strong communicator, it doesn't hold much relevance, and it's just diluting the rest of the information.
Yeah, no, fair enough, but absolutely. Well, thanks for the presentation. I thought that was really great. What I was going to throw out here for the last 10 minutes or so was some rapid fire questions for the panel, just to get everybody, get the juices flowing and so on. Feel free to chime in, everybody. And also for those listening at home, feel free to type into the chat room of our LinkedIn Live for any live questions. We'll get to them as well. So first off, in no particular order, I just wrote a whole bunch of questions out. How important do you think personal branding and is for an executive in 2026? I hear about this a lot. Becoming an influencer or becoming a thought leader. What does that mean, and how important is it for people looking for executive positions now? And I'll leave it whoever in the panel feels like chiming in.
I can step in. I mean, I feel like it's more relevant than ever in the job market that we're in. The job market is shifting quite a bit. I think we all recognize that and feel it, especially with AI in the mix. And, there's this term called the portfolio career, right? Where you are really capitalizing on your brand and your experience and the value that you bring, not just in a corporate role, but like, let's say for a board member role or building something of your own, whatever it might be. Like we have to remember that we are our own brands. We are not, yes, we might be representing the brand of a company, but like that is not your sole brand, right? And I think Tasha and Kathy both touched on the power of positioning. That is a huge component of the personal brand. You have to be thinking about what is your unique differentiator, having a pulse on who is your competition, right? And understanding how do you differentiate from them, with that value add and the expertise that you bring. So I'll pause there and see if Tasha or Kathy want to add on to any of that.
Any other comments on that question there? No?
I think I agree with you on you do need to know who your competition is out there. And I think, speaking from somebody that's older, understanding that you have to be able to, with knowing that there's younger people out there that definitely you have to keep up with your skills as an older person. You have to make sure that you're not falling behind there, especially with the movement of AI. Um, most of us are, if we don't stay relevant, we're going to be left behind because AI is moving so fast.
Maybe that's a good transition to another question I had for everyone was, how is AI and automation influencing what companies are expecting from executives, like the skill sets you're bringing now? I mean, I know in the operations side of things, being able to implement new AI solutions, AI agents, AI workflows is definitely in high demand from an operations executive standpoint in terms of like if you're hiring an operations executive in 2026, they should have some knowledge of this or understand how to do that or how to implement it. Not to say that they're experts and they're doing it themselves, but they understand the strategy around AI implementation, let's say. Is there anything else you think in terms of AI, like for other executives and other positions, like what should what should you be doing with AI in 2026 as an executive who's looking for their next position in terms of upskilling, let's say?
I would say keeping a pulse on the market and the industry that you're in. I think some people just assume that AI is just associated with the tech industry, and we all know that that is not the case. It's touching each and every industry right now. So keeping a pulse on how AI is influencing and impacting your industry and upskilling as such. So, John, I think you gave some really great examples of like ways that you can start incorporating using AI into your day-to-day workflows. And then, I mean, there's new jobs coming on the market every day related to AI. Like, yes, it might be impacting some roles, but it's also creating net new roles. So there might be opportunities that you may not have even thought about that you might end up being qualified for or excited about. So just kind of keeping your eyes and ears and open to those sort of opportunities as well.
Sense. We do have a question here from the audience. This is from Lori Walters. And she's asking that, I've seen some resumes that include a line or two about the company worked for or explaining what the company does. What are your thoughts on including, a company description in your resume? Do or don't do that for your new resume.
I say not a whole description, not a whole description, but a career services firm, recruiting firm, medical manufacturing, something that labels it but doesn't go into much detail, so they can just clearly see that that's a related industry to the job you're applying to.
That's fair. Anyone else?
So that she's talking about the job that she came from. Is that my
Yeah, on
understanding?
your resume, how much detail about the company that you're working for do you want to put in?
I would agree with what Tasha said.
Yeah, just a brief
Yeah,
acknowledgement of the industry and sector, I guess.
yeah.
Again, I feel like resumes are so subjective, right? Based on who's writing them and who's reviewing them. I would sort of agree, but sort of disagree because you also don't want to take up precious space on your resume that's talking about a company when you should be talking about yourself. So I think there's, instead of like taking up a whole line for it, like somehow weaving it into one of your maybe top bullets on your resume of that role. I impacted XYZ at a large insurance firm, blah, blah, blah. Like, I feel like you can kind of cleverly add it in that way.
Yeah, and you're right. You don't want to take up too much real estate on the document. So it's just really how you position it. I usually put it at the end of the company name, just a horizontal bar and say something. So it's not too noticeable, but it's there if they want to know.
And
That's
in
good.
terms of length for a resume in 2026, 1 page, 2 page, 3 page,
2 pages.
two is sort of the consensus.
Oh,
Sounds
I
good.
guess I have balloons.
Oh,
Yes.
happy birthday, Kelly.
I always say, like, if you have under 8 to 10 years of experience, try to get it to 1 page. If you have over and above that, 2 pages, but no more than that.
Fair enough. Here's another one for everybody. What do you consider candidate ghosting, and how should candidates handle situations where they feel they've been ghosted during the search process?
So you and I talked a little bit about that beforehand. And it's a really big subject and it's a really sore subject with a lot of candidates out there right now. I hear it all the time with people I talk to. You know, people that are either in the process of just applying that feel like, hey, I didn't even get an acknowledgement that, the position's been filled. Um, and you and I talked about how easy it is, like on Indeed, to just, blanket send out a notification on that, those types of things. But I think the ones that really bother me a lot are the ones that the people take the time, they go in, they interview, and they get crickets. And either they find out that the job isn't as it has been filled, or they don't get anything. Maybe the company has decided to be on a hiring freeze or anything like that. I do know from an HR perspective, sometimes it's not their fault that happens. Sometimes it's the hiring manager. It's not the recruiter's fault. It's not things. It sits at the hiring manager where they don't give you enough information to be able to tell you what to tell the candidate. But we do that it would still, you still need to get back with that person to
Yeah,
do that from a
sometimes no news is, at least telling them there is no news is better than not saying nothing, right? At
correct,
least then they have at
correct.
least an update of, okay, we all have to wait. We're waiting on the hiring manager. CEO's on vacation for 2 weeks. At least you're letting them know that there is a delay, rather than saying nothing is a good practice for sure.
And from a candidate perspective, at least continuing to inquire about the position, reminding them, that that's an action that they can take, is continuing to inquire about the position. I interviewed last week, writing it in a simple note, sending an email, letting them know that you're still out there, you're still interested, to keep doing that. A squeaky wheel is eventually going to get some grease, hopefully, whether it's, I'm sorry, the position's been filled, or, versus just letting it sit,
Yeah,
um,
good.
is an action you, as a candidate, you can continue to take.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. And maybe a couple final ones here. What do you think is skills or experience that's sort of a must-have for executive looking to transition to the C level? right? We have a lot of candidates out there now that are stuck at director, VP positions, and they're trying to get to the C level. What would you recommend, from the panel here today? What sort of upskilling or things are missing that maybe are not getting you into that head of position that you're looking for?
Well, it depends on where the holdup is. Are they not getting callbacks, or are they getting to the interview and then not getting it? So it's two different, but it all kind of comes back to measurable accomplishments and being able to clearly speak to those in a concise manner in the interview. You still got to be really persuasive. You are pitching yourself, in a way. So focus on measurable, on what you did. And it's actually really great to talk to somebody to pull these out of you. If you've been an expert in a certain field, you're in it. You don't have an outside perspective. And then you usually forget the real impact that you had. Maybe because it was just part of your job and then you didn't track the metrics on that. But that is extremely, extremely important to demonstrate, to have when you're trying to move into the VP level, strategic level, or higher.
I guess if you're caught in middle management for a long time, you tend to think about your scope of the job and what you've done, as you said, right, instead of the overall strategy and how you contributed. So it can be a bit a change of mindset, and as you said, talking to other people, right, to get an idea of like, what did I do, or what impact did I do that I didn't realize I was doing at the time. We get that tunnel vision, as you said. I agree that that can definitely happen. And also, I think depending on the level of position you're applying for, there is a bit of there's different not only qualifications, but skill sets that they're looking for the position you're applying for, right? If you're hiring for a general manager, right, there's certain soft skills that are needed for that position. At a director level is different. At a C level, there's different, right? At C level, we're looking for, being able to speak to a board and communication skills and EQ. And, I think, um, is your resume updated for the level that you're applying? Sometimes you could be using the same resume for, 3 or 4 positions, even though you've moved from a director to a head of role, and you're using the same resume. You just filled in some more keywords, and maybe a full update is needed in terms of, what level am I applying for, and so on. How often do you think people should be updating their resume? Every job, every year?
It's honestly, with AI and the amount of applicants, it's crazy to say, but tailoring your resume to every application is the best way to go. However, I know not a lot of people have that time. There are AI tools that kind of help you replace keywords. But tailoring it to each role is very important.
Okay. And maybe a final question for the panel. How important is LinkedIn in 2026? And how important is your having a good profile?
About 75% of recruiters and hiring managers look you up on LinkedIn before they call you. They want to see if it aligns with the resume. They just want to get a little sense of who you are. So it is extremely important for that to mirror your resume. So it's very, very important, LinkedIn.
All right.
I was
Well,
gonna
we'll
say, oh,
oh,
sorry, I
go
was
ahead.
gonna just say too, I just saw a Business Insider article about how AI like killed the resume and how LinkedIn profiles are more important than ever. So just echoing kind of everything Tasha said, and definitely check out that article if you haven't heard or seen it. It's very interesting.
Nice. Well,
And
oh, sorry, go ahead, Kathy.
oh, I was just going to say, and how it's important to also make sure that your LinkedIn profile isn't your resume. It really needs to be, they're two standalone.
Yes,
Two,
because if it looks like a copy and paste, you kind of look lazy.
yeah.
Well, looks like everyone's got some homework to do after this event to sort of stop the madness of job search. Just wanted to thank everyone today, Kathy, Kelly, Tasha. Thank you so much for being on our panel today. And We'll definitely provide your links so that everyone can connect with our panel today and continue to get some of the help that they need as they're going through this job search. The average job search, as they said, is 6 to 9 months. So we hope to be able to offer these events every month to help people that have that ongoing need as you're looking, trying to find your next role. It can be pretty draining psychologically, and having a community and people that can support you, I think, is a big part of that, right? To keep your head in the game. So thanks again for everyone for today and attending, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.